Good evening, everybody.
Again.
Out again.
Good to see
Hello.
everyone. Welcome, everyone, to episode 524 of Line Upon Line. Why is there divine protection for Israel, America, and Britain for now? I think the key there is for now. And this week we have Michael and we have Jason and obviously Dr. Ricks as always. If you would start us out, that would be great.
Okay, we'll have a few little fun for a good start with a few quick groaners. Mary owned a nursery, was famous for its chrysanthemums, and Jack had a kennel known for their pure puppies. Well, business wilted. Things were tough for both of them, so they got together to start something new called Mums and Pups.
All right. All right.
Yeah, in case I didn't get that quite straight.
Yeah.
Okay, this is called a South Dakota farmer. This South Dakota farmer rancher invited a Texan to see his large farm and ranch. He had a lot of acres. He was quite impressed, but the Texan said, that's really no big deal. He bragged about his Texas ranch. He says, my ranch is so huge, it's so big. I get in my car and I drive all day long and I'm only in the middle of it. And the South Dakota farmer said, yeah, I used to have a car like that too.
Now, typically, I don't like jokes on Texas, but that was pretty funny.
Yeah, I've had
I got
a lot
truck
of
like
bad
that
news
right
cars.
now.
So, to err is human, and to know that, well, to err is human, and to blame it on the computer is even more so. Usually when something goes wrong, it's the man behind the keyboard that didn't get, not the computer. But anyway, okay.
Don't
And
worry.
remember, if you frantically hit buttons randomly trying to fix it, it works every time. Because that's everybody I know.
One final one. You know, what people think is they need a really fuel efficient car. But in my experience, we really don't need that much of a fuel efficient car. What we desperately need is a car that when it breaks down, I can shoot it. And I've had a lot of cars. I felt like shooting the old
buddy.
bucket. Anyway, Rust bucket. But okay, now that we're all relaxed and having fun, let's look at divine protection for Israel. I think that's really a topic that has biblical meaning. We want to look at some of the biblical meaning. I'm just going to start with the obvious. When you get to the Bible, it tells you Abraham was God's special friend, and God promised him blessing for his descendants, who would eventually become quite a few in number, even though he was like 90 years old and had no kids. And it actually was a number of years before he had a son. But and I just think one of the miraculous blessings of Abraham is the nation of Israel over there in the Middle East today. When David Ben Gurion said, the way he worded it was, if you don't believe that the survival of Israel in 1948 is a miracle, you don't really believe in miracles.
Yeah, I think you could say that about some of the subsequent wars as well. The Six-Day War in 1967, the Yom Kippur War in 1973. I mean, the odds that they faced were pretty, insurmountable, I guess. I don't know, other than the fact that they surmounted them, it wouldn't just looking at the raw statistics, it wouldn't necessarily seem like it would come out that way. And yet there they are. They've been protected all these years.
Yeah, this is an odd story. I heard the story of the tank commander who was in charge of the Northern Front during the Six-Day War. As you all may know, the prime minister says, even though they knew they were getting ready to be attacked by several nations all around them, they said, no, don't unleash our Air Force first. which would have been the smart thing to do. Wait until they bomb us first. So we can clearly say, but they said, but that's not what, but they did it anyway. And there was a giant Egyptian army with a lot of tanks, Russian jets, and air defense systems to cover them coming from the south. So they told the guy in the north, tank commander, you got to hold them off for several days until we knock out the Egyptians, then we'll come and help you. And it's unbelievable how little things he did to slow down several nations like Syria, Iraq, and I forget whoever else is in there, from the north, outnumbered. It's like a miracle. He held them off enough time, and then they pulled off the miracle on the Sinai. And it's like, even when you see it and the guy described it, you think, I still couldn't describe it in one word, but his strategy of being on hilltops, diving, disappearing, and appearing, it's almost like God was with him. He was inspired, and they did it. They kept them out of populated areas of northern Israel until they could get relief. And that was a while. That was really a miracle.
You know, it's something you wrote right there. The war against Israel is not about land for peace. No, it is about the drive to destroy the Jews. Genocide, you think about it, you talk about people and they have all these ideas about what it's about, but it comes back to really two brothers. It's and you sit there and you say it's like that and you take it to that story. I don't know. It's almost, I guess, they're arguing for who was the one, birthright, I guess. Who's the real son, the real heir? But yeah, they definitely want. That was a huge thing on the last day of the last great day when that attack took place in this last feast. And you just kind of heard we didn't hear everything that had happened until we kind of got home, what had happened to them, and it was just like, especially as the weeks went by, all the details. That's a super hatred right there that's going on over there. It's just a sad, sad thing.
And people think it's land for peace. Do you realize in 1948, it was messy with the British who had the mandate over Jordan after World War I. But regardless of the messiness, Israel only had a small portion. The rest of the land was for those who non-Jews, which are, I guess, mostly Arab Palestinians. They had most of the land, a big
Yep.
chunk of it, and they still wanted the Jews wiped out.
Yep.
So it really isn't about land for peace, but everybody is told that. Isn't that a great justification?
Yeah, I was reading that about a little bit about that earlier before we came on, but it said that they were still upset about that, just that the little bit of land that they had. It's obvious, but what's so sad is what's going on in the college campuses here in the States, and all this pro-Palestinian, anti-Israeli stuff. That it was right up the street in Austin. We're just a little bit south of Austin, and it was going on at the UT campus. But I did hear, and I didn't watch the news. I sometimes get so sick of watching the news, but a friend of mine that watched it, because he knows Mason goes there, but Mason's actually at home this week, so I'm not worried about him being up there. But he said that I guess they tried to coordinate it or something like that. And they tried to reach out to these people that were going to do this anti-Israel peaceful protest, whatever they call them. And but they didn't get back with them, and they ended up doing this, and it became a big ruckus on the campus. And they're gonna, I think, ban some of those people. Kick them out and stuff. I think they should, but we allow a lot of stuff that shouldn't take place in this country.
Yeah, they had snipers on the roof in Ohio schools. they did. They had snipers on the roof of the school.
Is that at Ohio State?
I don't know if it was Ohio State, but it was at a school in Ohio and Indiana. They did the same. They had snipers on the roof. Now, I don't know what they're going to do with that, but
Well, do you feel any danger, Jason, being that close in Austin? Are the Jewish students at UT in danger in Austin?
I I mean, I really don't know. I say I wouldn't think so because I just, you know, it's hard to believe stuff like that'll hit so close to home. But Mason, he's gone. He's been going there for this is his second year. He's fixing to finish, and they've had some stuff down there where like the Israeli students were celebrating something or whatever, and he's gone and he's talk like Jewish holidays and stuff like that. He's gone to some of those things, and I think he even bought a shirt or something like that showing his support for Israel. But he a lot of times these people, I say it like this, a lot of times these people who want to attack somebody, they usually pick on people who are smaller or weaker or a woman or something like that. And they don't go pick on the big people. They don't go pick on the people that look like they wouldn't take it. You know what I mean? It's because they're bullies. You know what I mean? That's a lot of times that's what they are, but don't ever underestimate the power of a crowd,
That's true.
Well, I mean, what they're doing. If you watch what they're doing with these kids that are pulling all this garbage, it's only a matter of time before they radicalize them.
Yeah.
And they're strapping stuff to themselves. Yeah. I see that coming someday. I mean, these people are mentally disturbed to begin with.
Yes.
To be out there calling for the elimination of the Jewish people, just like the Hitler Youth did. I mean, it's not long before somebody's gonna talk them into strapping on something. I can't believe we're seeing this in this country. These kids have been their minds have been wiped.
Well, they got leaders too that support. What's that? Ilhan Omar.
Ilhan Omar.
And she went up to Colombia.
Yeah.
For her daughter was part of one of those protests, and she was praising all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean,
yeah, she's so proud.
I know. And
then we've got Rashida Tlaib up here in Dearbornistan in Michigan. Yeah. It's not. No, our church up until a couple years ago was in Dearbornistan, the church we went to. That's where we met. It was an actual church too. It was a church. So I'm kind of glad we're not there anymore.
Yeah.
us in Dearbornistan having services on a Saturday might have been a bad idea in the future. But I wouldn't be surprised if I don't know. This is just all disheartening to me.
Oh yeah,
that we are back to calling for the extermination of an entire people, and these kids are just all good with that.
Yep.
Yeah. It's like the idea that the nation of Israel exists there where it does today because of that. I mean, the modern nation of Israel. I mean, that is a reaction. That is a fallout from after World War II, when they wanted to just get out of Europe, and they were coming into Palestine, if you will, the protectorate that existed at that point in time after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, in such great numbers that the British actually tried to keep a lot of them out, and there were camps, and it was a big mess. But why were they going there in the first place? Well, is because of the attempted extermination during World War II, and that's kind of factored in. So their presence there is the problem. Then where is it that they're supposed to be exactly, if not there? It kind of falls apart at some point in time. But you see how the Church of God especially could get wrapped up in the animus that goes along with that, because to Joe Blow, who doesn't know any better, college student, getting high on hatred, the Sabbath day and other similarities are enough. It's enough. I couldn't tell you how many times I've been asked in life if I was a Jew or not. It's just over and over and over again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's happened to me. Most of the time, someone will say, "You don't eat pork. You must be Muslim." And I will say no. But sometimes they twinkle. You couldn't be Jewish, could you?
Hey,
and
Sammy Davis was Jewish.
That
Sammy Davis Jr. was Jewish.
But you've heard that old joke where Sammy Davis Jr. was. This is in the segregation days, and the bus came up, and they said, "Well, you got to get on the back of the bus." Sammy Davis said, "But I'm Jewish." The guy said, "In that case, get off the bus." I'm not saying it, but there's a certain. Never mind. You get the point of that joke.
Yeah.
Oh, anyway,
hey, we're 15 minutes in. We should probably start with the verses here eventually.
Yeah, we're getting distracted. But let's.
Well, there's so much going on. It's really easy.
Let's go to Genesis 12:2 and Psalms 122, please, Ken.
Alice.
You could make an argument that if you are against Israel, God
Say
is
that again. You
not going to
froze up for a
bless you.
second.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, you froze up for a second. You said if you're against Israel, what?
You're against God.
Yeah.
And God's not pleased with you. At least to that extent. And so I think you realize in 1948 when Truman authorized the nation part, and most nations in the world, did I freeze up again?
For a
Just
second.
briefly.
Okay. And all the nations in the world were opposed to it. Truman did it anyway, and America was blessed. He did the right thing. Now, it's interesting. I think Truman's mother said someday he'd do something great for God. He was also in business with a Jewish business partner in Kansas City. They're retail together. I wonder if that was part of why he did it, but we don't really know for sure. But he did the right thing.
You know, the history of persecution of the Jews around the world, particularly through Europe, you know, where a lot of the majority of immigrants to America came from, it's real bad. You know, by all means, look into it at some point in time. Look into the history of it. They've been pushed around, pushed out, you know, stuck off by themselves, all kinds of stuff. And you know, there's justifications for it that are still extant. You know, you hear a lot of reasons behind it that sound eerily like propaganda from the late 1930s in Germany. You know, a lot of those stories still make the rounds, if you will. And in this country, I think with our Constitution and with religious protection, I mean, the Jews weren't necessarily welcome in every one of the colonies early on, but the idea that, you know, the freedom of worship is such an amazing blessing, and we kind of take it for granted, and it's not like that everywhere in the world, even today. And it certainly wasn't like that in Europe at the time that, you know, people were fleeing here for the large part, right? To be able to, you know, not be forced to tithe to the Church of England, or not to be under the thumb of the Catholic Church, or, you know, and so many other things like that went on in Europe. And it is a blessing. It's been a blessing to everyone that has found their way here. It's been a blessing to the whole world by extension.
Let me counter something to consider. Dennis Prager said the Jews have prospered in America and been accepted in America far more than any other place in their history. I would argue the Jews are part of the financial success of America. And you could flip that argument. When the Spanish kicked the Jews out, the Great Spanish Inquisition, at least in many respects, Spain never benefited from its colonies as you would have expected, because their economy lacked good financial managers and other things. But if they had because the Jews were very successful in Spain, if they had left the Jews alone, Spain would have prospered. I almost guarantee you their economy would have done so much better. They would have been blessed if they had left the Jews alone. And America was blessed because we didn't. We allowed the Jews to contribute. And, you know, if you really look into the success of many retailers and all kinds of businesses, you'll see that the Jews have been positive contributors.
You know, I sit there and I think, you know, God gives these instructions because, you know, God has a plan, and Israel is obviously a big piece of that plan. And you know, I was trying to look up verses that kind of went along with this, but you remember Balaam, the son of Beor, and it says that they hired to curse Israel. Remember, and he says, "Nevertheless, the Lord your God would not listen to Balaam, but the Lord your God turned the curse into a blessing for you, and because the Lord God loves you, and He's preserving something that's going to be essential in His plan of what He's working out." But another thought, kind of taking this in a little tiny bit different direction, but today we're spiritual Israel, and I looked up a couple of verses, but what does he say? What's our instructions on a personal spiritual level? That we're supposed to bless those who curse us. It's like me fixing my mind in this world that's so, I mean, you can really get caught up in getting super, like that stuff that went on down the road in Austin can make me really have bad thoughts about a lot of people. But I still have to keep my mind preserved correctly, just as God's working out His plan, my part of that plan is to have the right attitude. You know what I mean? It can get confusing sometimes.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Netanyahu said the other day that anti-Semitism is like the canary in the mine. It's the Jews now, but worse things will follow. And certainly in the 1930s, that happened. And in other words, if this thing gets out of control, it'll pull the world into things that will be bad for the world as a whole. We know it's only going to be bad for the Jews. Probably not. I mean, now it looks like this is not going to happen, so I'm not going to panic anybody. But if the Middle East blew up into a bigger, wider Middle East war, do you realize we could have oil at $150, $200 a barrel?
Oh yeah, it wouldn't take. Yeah, I mean, it would take something, but I mean, yeah, there's a lot of little things that could fall apart over there real quick. Somebody could make a mistake and cause a problem in the Straits of Hormuz, and things could get out of hand real quick. And things could fall like dominoes kind of quick. But problem right now with this country is our administration is trying to cover both sides of this, and it never works out well when you're trying to placate both sides. You're sending money to both sides. He wants to win the election, so he don't want to, hack off everybody in Minnesota and Dearbornistan, and he wants to try and placate them so he gets their vote, so they don't stay at home, but then again, he don't want to, tick off all the Jewish people in Israel. So it's not going to end well. I mean, with the way he's playing this, can't play both sides. You got to pick a side and make a stand.
Or you could be really neutral, but financing both sides is not really being neutral, is it?
Yeah, sending money to Hamas that gets to Iran to get more weapons to shoot into Israel is not a smart move.
No.
Would you read Deuteronomy 8:11, please, Ken? What we might say is America, Britain, and Israel are people of the book. And by the way, book means the Bible. And that's one way to look at them. And with the support of Israel's allies, and actually the Abraham Accord is holding to some extent. Those Abraham Accord allies of Israel helped out, at least in some respects. Israel apparently is going to win its war against Hamas. I mean, at least that's how it looks now, as we'll see if Hamas makes a great comeback, but that's how it looks. And by the way, this could be historic. I mean, they say the Jewish people were very secular and worldly. For instance, that music festival that was attacked by Hamas fighters, well, apparently they had a giant Buddha there. They were very much into secular things. Well, the horror of October 7th has made many Jews who are agnostic become more religious, and Israel is more unified than it's been in a long time. It's almost like there's a political shift in Israel, in the Middle East. If that's true, and if it holds for a while, so that's the question: will it hold? Let me get your thoughts. Um, what do you think, Jason? Do you think it'll hold for a while in Israel?
I I sure would like to see things change and get better. You know, it seems like, even here, every I always say it's like a pendulum that keeps coming down. And it seems like we get to hit an upswing. It's like things have been so bad lately. The pendulum's going to come up. The problem is when it comes back down, it always cuts deeper, and you would like to think, after that attack, it's like they said that after 9/11 here wasn't uh, church attendance up like a whole lot, but then, it wanes after a while. Everything goes back to being normal. Our our own conceits take over and we follow what we want.
Any thoughts, Michael, about Israel holding on?
Israel becoming more religious could manifest itself in different ways. I think that there are things to be watched for in that as well. You can look at the statements out of some of the members of Netanyahu's government, like Ben Gurion, I believe, who's more of a hardline religious party than Netanyahu's own, who was very unhappy with the response that they dealt to Iran afterwards, after the drone attack here a week or so ago. He called it feeble. So to turn more religious is not necessarily, maybe not in their minds, to be more forgiving, or to be more brotherly love, or to keep hold on yourself, maybe, as Jason was saying, like when you begin to have these thoughts, from that point of view, you could argue that Israel is in a fight for its existence, and you might feel a little bit differently if you saw those drones being intercepted over your own country. Maybe you would feel that it's more like time to stand up for yourself before it's too late. So I think there might be something to watch for in that. Of course, we only speculate. You don't know how that's going to play out, and certainly there was a great deal of caution in the response to that, because for whatever strength and the allies that Israel has over there, the idea of inflaming the entire Arab world is not small doings. It's a very big deal, and it's life and death for those people. If nothing else, I think they've certainly realized that. And you talked about the dance. To be at a rave after sundown, which is the beginning of the last great day, is utterly disrespectful to the religion of the people over there. Whether or not they're those who participated were among it or not. That's really pushing it. And so, but turning for that country to turn more religious, I feel like that could have a number of different outcomes.
I think that Gavir wanted them to knock out some of their nuclear facilities, right? And by the way, they hit the town where they enriched uranium, but they only hit the airfield. And some experts say they were sending a message to Iran: we can penetrate your air defense, and we can knock out some of your nuclear stuff if we want to. So you better behave. But also Netanyahu, like you said, did not want to enrage his allies by going too far. We always think political decisions, because when you read in history, you think, well, Truman made the right decision. It was easy to make the right decision. But actually, if you were there at the time with people pulling you both ways, it's not easy to make the right decision. I'm not saying he made the wrong decision. I'm just saying it's tougher to do than we might think it is.
Especially, you don't have to see too far through a brick wall to conceive of how that's going to be received by a lot of other nations in the world. You know, when the Arabs had been allied with the Axis powers through a lot of that fighting and stuff, and they're sick of colonial rule or anything like that, if you will. You can see how the creation of Israel is going to go over like a lead balloon.
Yeah. So what I think is true, though I guess we'll see, the more they come back to God, more of them keep the Sabbath and other stuff that they know they should do, the more blessing and protection they'll get from God. And the reason I put this scripture in here was, I think Moses was saying, when you've been blessed and things are going well, isn't the natural tendency to say, well, it's because we're smart.
Yeah.
And so, the Israelites could, and the Jews could rely on their technology, which is impressive. I mean, they knocked out, was it 30 ballistic missiles? That is quite impressive.
Yeah.
With their Iron Dome and David Sling, etc. And I'm not knocking, according to, I won't mention the person who told me this, but they take American weapons and they give them a real world trial. Because we don't have war. So they took our missile defense and put it to real world testing and improved it a little bit, and then they share the technology. So Israel is important to us in that respect. But I don't know if the current administration fully, or the American people fully appreciate it. They improve our tech, even the stealth fighters, they go into places that America hasn't had to go into for a while. And I think they outdid the Russian, whatever it's 300 air defense system. That's quite something to see done in a real world. It's one thing to have a weapon in a lab, but to try it out in a real combat situation is another thing. And I'm just saying, if Israel relies on their smarts and not on God, they'll be facing disaster. But isn't that going to be true of America too, to some extent?
Yeah, that scripture to me reads very much like a warning.
When you said people sometimes they get, I guess, start thinking, even like it's me of my own will that this happened. I gear up for the feast real early, but I'm already going in my mind what I'm gonna put together. It usually takes me a long time for put stuff together, but something that I've recently kind of learned, I guess, is the failure of assumptions. And a lot of times, like assuming things, and you might give somebody, think, oh, this person's like this or this and that, and then you become disappointed. But one thing that occurred to me was the worst assumption I can actually make is really of myself. And I'm kind of going into this, and I sat there and I can give you examples in here because we think of Peter as one of the best examples of who to be in this Bible. But you remember, he was the one that, like, he was going to fight the fight. And what did Christ tell him? He said, get behind me, Satan. He knew that this was, Peter probably didn't quite understand that, but, and also, he was the one that would have fought with him all the way. But then he gets a nice dose of reality when he tells him, he says, look, I'm going to tell you that you're going to not deny me, 3 times. And, I'm sure he meant everything in his heart and everything, but it's when we become headstrong and we take on that will that it's me and I walk forward marching with my fist in the air. I have to stop and say, I got to walk at the pace with God and say, it's God that's going to get me through everything. I heard in a sermon a long time ago, somebody said, if you look around and Christ isn't there, you need to, and you're wondering why he's not there, know that he doesn't change. It was you that moved away. Even if I'm sitting here trying to stormtroop and be the best Christian I can, and well, you know what? I have to put my faith in everything and my trust God and do it at his pace. He's got a plan. But, so that was the thing about making assumptions. And the worst one I can make is myself thinking that I'm doing it. You know what I mean? I don't know if I went long-winded and didn't really make that point good, but I hope y'all understood what I was saying.
That was a good point. It was good. Pat yourself on the back there.
Yeah.
It was good.
We can move on to Luke 3:8, please, Ken.
All right. Bring therefore fruits worthy of repentance, and begin not to say within yourselves, we have Abraham to our father. For I say unto you that God is able of these stones to raise up children unto Abraham.
I think that's kind of like the second part of that warning from Deuteronomy. The leaders, by the way, Christ got along with the Jewish people. He was super popular. Matter of his problem was crowd control. He was so popular. But the leadership was green with jealousy, and maybe they had other. And also, he called them snakes in the grass. So obviously and they were hypocrites. But the leadership hated him. But they thought, yeah, but we're children of Abraham, and we've got the temple here. Nothing bad can ever happen to us. And the people in Israel and in America cannot rely on whatever birthright blessings we think we have. You can't rely on those. We have to maintain a reasonable relationship with God.
Yeah, it's certainly a warning against arrogance. I mean, you can recognize where your blessings come from, but you certainly can't be complacent or, live contrary to the word of God and expect it to continue, to fall into that, because we're rich and we've been blessed and so on and so forth, that, oh man, look how great we are. Nobody can take us on, even if there is, evidence that might make you feel that way. You certainly cannot fall into that attitude, because you end up just asking for it.
One thing I think that happened to the Jews and is happening to America to a certain extent, when you're blessed and you're prosperous, you don't feel a need for God. One thing that happened to the Jews, at least in many places, like in Spain and later in Germany and other parts of Europe, they were very successful as financiers and middlemen and other things. In between pogroms every so often, they were very, very prosperous. I mean, for the most part. And and Israel is probably, as far as not including the wealthy sheiks at the top, but as far as just general public, Israel is the wealthiest nation in the Middle East. And I think they're number 11 economically in the whole world, considering their size. And I think they're number 11 in technology. Considering their size, that's quite an accomplishment. So they're doing well financially. And can you see that when you're blessed like that, it's easy to forget God?
Yes.
So the question is, right now they're kind of like people of the book. How long will they stay looking toward God and getting God's protection? And the same could be said for America. We're hearing signs more and more of our country's drifting further away from our traditional Christian roots.
Yeah, I've seen a stat that 99% of the country considered itself Christian in the world 1900 or something like that. And just a couple years ago, it was down to like 63% or that range.
And I think it's even lower now, but I had to double check that.
And consider what considering yourself Christian could actually consist of. It doesn't have to be a whole lot, It doesn't really.
Right.
It really doesn't. It doesn't mean the same thing as it might to us necessarily, or to anybody who keeps their nose in their Bible.
Mm-hmm.
It's true.
And to make it worse, the elites are making Christianity like it's a sin.
Yeah, I would think that most people that consider themselves Christian, probably don't even go to church of any kind.
Yes. That's true. That's
Not
true.
on a regular
I know a lot of
basis.
people who are like they're quick to tell you they're Catholic, but they're non-practicing Catholics. They don't even keep. I don't know. I think they consider Easter more sacred than Christmas, I believe. But like, if you don't do anything, you're supposed to at least go to Easter. But
CEO.
huh? Yeah, that.
CEOs, Christian or Christmas and Easter only.
Yeah, and I mean, a
CEOs.
lot of them don't even really do that.
Yeah. Before I was in the church, I didn't go to a church. I consider myself.
Yeah. You identified it as Christian.
I know here in the greater St. Louis area, they had to combine several dioceses and closed a bunch of Catholic churches. Not that there are no people left. It's just that I guess smaller percentages show up to Mass than ever before.
Oh yeah, they've been closing churches down around. Catholic churches have been closed down around here for years. They've been, these big, massive cathedrals, and they're empty.
Actually, they have one.
All right, the diocese in Tyler, the bishop actually got booted. He got kicked out, or he got his diocese removed. His diocese removed. Sometime in the last year, I believe. He's very outspokenly conservative and against a lot of the liberal trends inside of the Catholic Church. He'd travel around and speak all over. I don't know how they do down there necessarily, but that was kind of big news, I guess.
I heard about that.
I remember that.
I heard about that. How's he doing now? Is he completely out of everything and poverty stricken or what?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't know that they own much to begin with, but he was very popular already, traveling and speaking, and
you talk about lots of different churches. This is you know where our church is out in Cedar Creek, Michael. You've been there? Maybe not.
I've never been there. No.
So it's probably like a 25-30-minute ride for me. And the majority of people live in Austin, and they come, and they're probably 45 minutes just getting out of Austin. But there was a guy that I was talking to that he used to be a contractor that worked in the same field as we do. But anyways, I was talking to him, and he come down Lockhart, and he knew Lockhart, Cedar Creek area and all that. And I was telling him I went to church in Cedar Creek, and he was like, why do you go to church out there? Because he was thinking, man, isn't there probably at least 10 churches in Lockhart. And I know there's a couple on 183 going out before you hit 21, and there's maybe 2 or 3. I was like, he's like, why do you drive all the way out there to go to church? And I told him, because of the truth.
That's funny though. That's the common idea. It's you just go wherever's closer. It's all the same. What's the difference?
Yeah.
A lot of churches today are social events. They're just, people will leave a church because, they just get along with the Wilsons better or whatever, I mean, I don't know. It seems like, I don't want church to sound cheap, but it's like, they're not making a good investment, It's like the best investment in your life is your life. Choose life or death, I mean, but they don't read the scriptures. They do not know. They can't understand what this book is actually saying, but yeah, I told the guy, I said, I go all the way out there for the truth. Because that's where it is.
Can't you get the truth close to home?
You get the truth delivered. Look, we're online.
Yes.
Really, Satan hates God and the birthright people of God, the Jews and America. I mean, obviously, Satan hates all mankind, but he hates a special hatred for the people of God. And Christ was Jewish, and so he has a special hatred for the people of the book, the Jews. Would you read Matthew 24:9, please, Ken?
Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake.
And I think, obviously, that refers to true Christians, but I think it also applies to the Jewish people as well. The Jews brought us Christ, I mean, in the physical sense, through Mary and David. And Satan, I almost feel The anti-Semitism, which has existed in world history for thousands of years, cannot be explained except for Satan, the devil. It's not a particular battle over land, because countries have border battles all the time. It doesn't lead to genocide and continue century after century of anti-Semitism popping up. It's got to be a spiritual thing.
It sure feels like it right now. I mean, there's some spirit running through all these protests and all these kids that are out on these out on these lawns with the same tents and throughout the country. There's some kind of there's some kind of consistent spirit running this whole show.
It's almost like the devil will pick some evil man like Hitler to lead the way. And you look at Hitler's background, clearly a lost, evil man who you would never expect it to come to such power, except Satan gave it to him. And you know, I'm not saying who he will or won't use. We'll find out as years go on. But you can sense, there's like a canary in a mine, sensing dangerous gases. The evil is growing in the world as anti-Semitism grows. Now, maybe we can fight it back a little bit. You think maybe America is starting to push back against it a little bit?
I know an awful lot of people are tired of it. Whether or not how it pans out, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I mean, people are tired of it, but they don't really have the people that are tired of it really don't have any power to do anything about it. But they are tired of it, and it is getting to be, I think, a growing majority. I think that what we're fighting is still a major minority. That's why it's fighting so hard for its life to to get control of the country and keep control of it.
Mm.
Because they are not in the minority or in the majority, and they know it. But they need to keep control, or else everything they do and will fall apart.
You actually saw the same thing in Israel when they were against Netanyahu and his more religious conservative parties. And they were, matter of fact, they were like squabbling and fussing with each other big time until they were attacked. And it's like, well, I'm not saying, but maybe if America can move away from that, we might keep our blessings and protection longer. I don't know. Which way will we go?
I don't know. It's hard to say because there's a lot of people that are not, you say you try to get to the root cause of things, but there's not a lot of people really raising their kids right today. And so it just seems like with time, with more generations coming, it's only going to get worse because of that reason. It's not a, I heard a sermon and it was probably a couple of years back, but they went back just to the time of 9/11 and they said people who were born then, that generation and what they had experienced, and then they went and they did went back a couple, they were showing the difference of what the, I guess, normal in people's life is, you know what I mean, and the stuff that's gone on all over the world and the culture in America, which has changed dramatically. The stuff whether they always say, if grandma and grandpa were here, they'd be rolling. Well, grandma and grandpa knew they'd be rolling in their grave, just seeing what's going on and what is acceptable. Just 7 o'clock TV hour for people. We don't even watch it anymore because it's just horrible. But it's just by another generation coming, nothing is. We're going to lose it just because of that. It's not being taught in the home what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah, you could ask, where is the average individual's point of view going to end up if they are exclusively like raised by media, if you will? Like you turn a kid loose on a phone from the time that they're real tiny, and that's it. Like that's where the truth comes from. You know how it's going to turn out. There's not much chance there.
Yeah, the TikTok generation.
Oh yeah.
Kim, would you read the next two set of scriptures, please?
Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For our wrestling is not against flesh and blood, but against the principalities, against the powers, against the world rulers of this darkness, against the spiritual hosts of wickedness in heavenly places. And that sure is truer now than any time that I can remember. And in Psalms 83, 1-4, do not keep silent, O God. Do not hold your peace, and do not be still, O God. For behold, your enemies make a tumult, and those who hate you, you have lifted up their head. They have taken crafty counsel against your people and consulted together against your sheltered ones. They have said, come on, or come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be remembered no more.
And I think that that kind of thing is a reference to genocide. Now, maybe it didn't exactly say it's a prophecy of genocide, but it is that kind of thing, because Satan hates God. He hates God's people. He hates the nation that has the sign of God, people of the book, and that's why anti-Semitism never dies forever. It may die off for a while, and it percolates back up every. I mean, it's almost from Haman to Hitler to Hamas. Haman, Hitler, Hamas. But you know what? It just keeps popping back up.
Right.
It's kind of sick to consider that what Hamas did is it's really a PR war, right? It's a war for the hearts and minds of the rest of the world. What are they going to do? They're going to conquer Israel. They're going to take over. They're going to throw, what are they actually going to accomplish? No, they murder a whole bunch of people. They take a whole bunch of captives who are still there. They're still holding them. Israel actually waits 3, 4, a week. I don't remember exactly how many days before they wait to strike back. Why do they have to do that? They have to wait for the news, for the facts about what happened to spread around the world, so that the big headline is not, Israel rolling all over Gaza. And so what do we have? What do we have this entire time? Hamas is still firing rockets. They're still holed up in Rafah down there. They're still doing whatever they can to make it look like there's a real war going on. But the thing that they're trying to achieve, maybe intimidation of the Israeli people on one hand, but is to turn all of Israel's supporters and the rest of the world against them, to cut off that support, to turn public opinion against them. And they're willing to sacrifice their own people to do that. They're willing to commit unbelievable atrocities against the Israeli people to bring on this response. And it's sick. I mean, it's crafty and it's sick, but you cannot think for a moment that they care about the fate of their own people, or they wouldn't have done a heinous, cowardly thing like that in the first place. And they would have given those hostages back a real long time ago. I mean, it's a farce. It's a farce.
The entirety of what they're fighting is a propaganda war. I mean, the concept of the Palestinian people is a propaganda war. There is no Palestinian people. These are Jordanians, and I forget what others that were left over there after the 6-Day War, when they told them to stick around because you could just walk into the houses after we destroy the Israel. The Jews, you're going to just pick a house. You'll be able to take it. They got stuck there, and they became the Palestinian people, which is what this whole propaganda has been pushed for. You're right. It's sick, and it's sick that our young people are falling for this. It's sick that their minds of mush are being used against the Jews, and it's just every day I see this, I can't believe these people are these same people that call everybody Nazis are the Hitler Youth. There's no difference between these people in 1933 or back in Germany. They were embarrassed. I mean, especially after what they had done to the Jewish people. These people love it. They want to do more of it. They want more death. They want them wiped out off the face of the earth, not just from the river to the sea. They want them gone everywhere. And that's the spirit we're fighting against.
Have you noted that our media hasn't put the names of one of the American hostages on TV or mentioned them even once? Now, maybe they have, and I just haven't noticed it. But I haven't seen any media story. Was there 11, 13, whatever it is, American hostages They have not been mentioned once. Or their parents interviewed, oh, my poor Johnny's over, whatever. There's been none of that. How come the American media hasn't at least mentioned our hostages at all?
Well, that's part of the effort of the Muslims to keep their enemies afraid. They're afraid to say anything. Even if they wanted to, I don't not that they do. Even if they wanted to do things like that, they're afraid because they know what will happen to them.
Hmm.
They will do anything. I mean, when you strap bombs to your 10-year-old and send them into the Israel to blow them up, you'll do anything.
That's true.
Absolutely anything.
I just wonder, it's somehow it's negative of our media to not even give any coverage to the American hostages or ask Hamas, well, can you tell us how many are alive? Are they in good? Our media will not even ask the question. I have no idea how many American hostages, who they are. It's like, oh no, we don't want to talk about that because that embarrasses Hamas, and we might, like you say, be considered Islamophobic. I guess that's what they think, but somehow it just doesn't make any sense. I know it's what they're doing. It's just, I guess, expecting our media to make sense. Only if you loved America would it make sense. But it's something to think about. But in the current excuse, land for peace, you realize in 2005, under pressure from the Bush administration, Israel gave up Gaza because there were some Jews living there. They made all the Jews living there leave, and they gave up control to the local people. Eventually, Hamas, I guess, killed off the PLO leadership and they took over. Um, but whatever happened inside, what did the Jews get for giving up Gaza for peace? Rocket attacks for years and years. That's what they got.
Yep.
Land for peace does not work, and that's not really what they actually. They've taken interviews of people in the Middle East on both sides. Neither side wants a two-state solution. Both sides,
You
at
know,
least the Muslims, all want Israel completely gone.
it's interesting you said that because if I remember right, back then there was a lot of talk. This is way back years ago when they gave up some land after 9/11, didn't they?
Yeah, I think they've given up some other land here and there. Um,
There was a lot of talk about that being a big mistake as far as turning over Israeli land to them. You know, I forget the whole gist of it, but it
I
something
believe that
reminds
was
me of.
certain settlements in the West Bank area. And after the 2005, it was Hamas was actually elected. I think it was '06 when they held an election, and they've been at odds with the PLO or the PLA, whatever whatever you want to call it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but land for peace is not really what their antagonists want. They have plenty of
No.
land. They actually, in one sense, you can say there's plenty of Arab land around there. They want genocide.
Yep.
They're being inspired. Now, they don't know they're being inspired by evil spirits, of course not, but they are, that's my opinion. Just like Haman was, and Hitler was, and a bunch of others in world history, or the Spanish crown was at one point in the history of Europe, and others. Um, that's the world we live in, but nobody really knows it. But I'm hoping Israel can stay closer to God and get his protection longer. I'm hoping America can get closer to God and keep our protection. But like I said, for now, because I worry that we're drifting further and further away. And most people don't even think about it, that we're drifting further away from God. Christianity's become kind of a whipping boy. Is that the right term?
Yeah. I mean, we've got our younger generation The new axis of evil is North Korea, Iran, and the Ivy League right now. I mean, tell me that's not true. I mean, it's just horrible what they've done to these young people. They go into school, they go to the higher education to be made dumber. I mean, they come out dumber.
I remember Ronald Reagan made a statement. He says, it's not that the liberals are ignorant. He says, so much of what they know is just not true.
Exactly. And they don't think they fail. They just think they need to do more of that stuff that always fails. If we do more of it, we'll succeed eventually.
And I think the evil powers oppose all sources of spiritual truth. I even heard they're mad at Elon Musk because he's allowing some videos up of bad behavior by certain people of a certain religion. And all the other media moguls wouldn't, those stories have been blackened, darkened, and spiked. And they're mad at him. It's like, if you're a source of truth, even worldly truth, they're against you.
It's the stabbing of the bishop in Australia, I believe, who they're a Syrian church or something like that, and they want it to stay up, but because it's violent and because it's an extremist attack, the government requested it to be taken down. They blocked it in Australia, but Elon said no, you don't have control over what content gets seen in the entire rest of the world, so it's actually going to court. I believe it's still up. I don't know for sure. I haven't seen it. I don't really want to see anybody get stabbed, so.
No. But there's no use sweeping that stuff under the rug.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that it happened, and if it was online and the guy is okay with it staying up there, the victim is okay with it staying up there, then I don't know why Australia should have all that much to say about it. But that's my opinion, and it doesn't count for anything.
But they don't want too much truth up. Would you read John 4:22, please, Ken?
You worship what you do not know. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews.
And also, Paul in the book of Romans was explaining to the Romans, who of course were Gentiles, that they should appreciate that they stand on the scriptures that have been preserved by the Jews and other things, that they stand on that foundation, not on a pagan foundation. Would you read Romans 11:18? And they should appreciate it.
Thou boast, thou bearest not the root, but the root thee. For if you were cut out of the olive tree, which is wild by nature, and were grafted contrary to nature into a cultivated olive tree, how much more will these who are natural branches be grafted into their own olive tree? For I do not desire, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery.
Paul further clarifies it by saying the Jews will, at some later point in history, all be converted and everything will be great when it happens. And they shouldn't feel better than the Jews because they have accepted the full truth and the Jews haven't. Would you read verse 26, please, Ken?
And so all Israel will be saved, as it is written, the deliverer will come out of Zion. He will turn away ungodliness from Jacob. For this is my covenant with them, when I take away their sins. But concerning the election, there are beloved for the sake of the fathers.
In other words, he's saying, regardless of whether they're fully converted now, election means, selection. They've been chosen by God to get certain blessings because of Abraham. And those blessings still exist. Israel is still beloved. You could even argue that in some ways they're still the apple of God's eye. I know that applies to David, but you could expand it out to the people of the birthright to some extent as well. And he's telling us Gentile Christians, we should appreciate that we stand on the foundation that was preserved by the Jewish people and the Old Testament. And I think a lot of people don't appreciate that.
Isn't there a verse in the Gospels where he says, because they had their own oral traditions, but he does say, he says, don't do what they say, but don't do what they do. There's something like that, right? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah.
But and that they are the ones that have to this day. We know the Sabbath. We know certain things because they have kept to those things.
And the principles of God have always been the same. Like what he's hoping to cultivate in humanity was the same from the beginning, before the flood, during the time of the patriarchs, before the giving of the law. The law attempted to codify and enshrine it. Now, obviously, true conversion is far beyond just the letter, but the letter is supposed to keep you from like the extremity of abuse and it's rules for a society to be built. I mean, it was for the founding of a nation, and to understand that what Jesus Christ brought, it was not his message was revolutionary and it was new in many ways, but it was based on these same principles when you understood them fully. And that's what he said as much. That's what Paul says. When you see the truth of that, it's not like a new truth that when he was asked about the greatest commandments in the law, to love God and to love your neighbor as yourself, he was quoting from the law, and yet those are utterly Christian principles the way that most of the world regards them. But it's the same philosophy behind it all.
Ken, would you read James 4:4, please?
Adulterers and adulteresses, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Whoever therefore wants to be a friend of the world, himself makes himself an enemy of God.
It seems obvious the world is deceived by Satan in various degrees in various places, being misguided. And anti-Semitism is spiritually driven. It is not a normal thing. I mean, one group can be hated for a while and they fight over land and stuff, but usually those things go away or they settle out. But anti-Semitism has been around for thousands of years. There's no other explanation except it's a worldly thing controlled by evil. See, I've got some more notes, but basically, I think that's what I meant to say. Oh, spiritual adultery is just a way of being in the world with what the world is doing. And I think we true Christians need to appreciate the world is set against God and against God's people.
Come out of her, my people. I mean, we just got done with the Passover, and I think we were kind of talking about this, Ken, but that's us putting Christ in our heart. When we accept that, when we do that, and it's interesting. Like when that happened in Egypt, and they came out. It's the coming out. Egypt representing the world, and in order to do that, it seems like all these holy days just work together to tell a story about what's going on. But a big part of that is unleavening my heart. Taking a lot of stuff and not being that person that is of this world, because it's funny because I said we got the 7 days of unleavened bread, and a lot of people have never even heard that. They've never even heard of that. And I had a buddy of mine years ago. He's like, "Aren't you doing that unlimited bread thing?"
All you can eat.
Unlimited.
And well,
Oh,
it's kind of like, was that a Freudian slip? He's saying obviously the way the world is, it's unlimited bread. I don't, but I sat there and I thought,
feast, right? Unlimited bread. It makes sense, Jason.
Yes. So now we're trying not to do the unlimited bread.
Oh, that's good.
I miss my pretzels. Never mind. I guess our last scripture we should read, Genesis 3:14, please, Ken.
And the Lord God said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel.
You could make the argument that Jesus Christ is, at least he's part human and part divine, but from the human side of it, he is a child of mankind, and he will someday subdue the serpent, who is a picture of Satan. And we don't know exactly how much of that's imagery. How did Satan possess a big snake? It really doesn't matter. Or I think some people translate it whispering enchanter. But whatever it is, someday a man, or at least one who was a man, Jesus Christ, will lock Satan up in the bottomless pit. Satan knows it, and he hates Christ and his people, probably with a vengeance.
Yep. Probably why he spread the lie of ever burning hell, because that's basically his fate. He's going to be spend eternity locked in the pit. Just so he's kind of did a similar thing to try and convince us that God is evil, kind of to everybody, and I'm sure that's behind that.
So I would just say, pray for Israel. I believe God's more likely to bless us if we pray for Israel's safety, because nobody knows what the next couple of weeks are going to bring. At least if I'm listening to some of these media people, they're correct. They say Israel seems satisfied that they look good, and the Iranians are trying to save face. And obviously, if they do more attacks, they're going to look bad, so they probably won't do much. Now their proxies might do stuff, but they are not going to do anything big. Assuming that it stays that way, we will probably have only a little bit of conflict in the Middle East. You think that's probably what's going to happen, Michael?
I mean, we just have to see how it plays out and how the reactions come out. I was reading a week or so ago, Iran trying to inject themselves into Sudan. There's been a big civil war going on there. It's not utterly far south. It's right on the other side of the entrance to the Red Sea from Yemen. Sudan has been engaged in a civil war for a very long time. I believe they're trying to support the same side in it that we are, and so it's almost like a competition for influence, but that they have been delivering these drones and things like that over there, and it's probably going to make a difference in that battlefield. But the idea that they're cultivating another ally on the other shore of the Red Sea, and could they potentially close that up in the future? Could their proxies close that up in the future? I don't know. That's just me. That's just me running my mouth. But in many ways, it is a competition for influence, and how many weapons can they supply, and what kind of wackos are they going to supply them to? What are those people going to do once they give all that stuff away? It's kind of out of their hands, isn't it?
Yep. I heard something odd. They for several years there's supposed to be sanctions on Russian oil. They can only sell it for a price that they feel won't let the Russians or the Iranians have enough money to push military adventurism. But the guy is related to the Biden interest somehow. There's some middleman who's found a way to, I guess, get Iranian and Russian oil sold at whatever the world market price is. And so the question is, Britain is now making a stink and trying to cut this guy out and say, we Europeans got to really, in other words, they have, but they're allowing people to get around them. Mm-hmm. Now, I guess they probably might argue, well, we can't keep these people from cheating. But the truth is, maybe they want the oil. If that's the only way they can get it, they'll take it. In other words, they're not serious about putting sanctions on Iran that will cut off their financing. Mm-hmm. Now, will they start? The Britons are starting to make a stink out of it. Because it involves somebody that Biden had some relationship with in the past, our media probably won't touch the story with a 10-foot pole.
In the wake of the drone attack recently, I'm pretty sure I read somebody saying that they weren't going to touch, they put further sanctions on, but they weren't going to touch Iran's oil business because they didn't like that, out of fear of pushing them too far, like that would be too much. They didn't want to actually hinder them economically because of fear. I don't know. But to come right out and say it, I'm just
But if you're financing both sides, does that make sense?
No.
We've got weak leadership. That's what weak leadership does. Trying to make everybody happy.
So all I can say, pray for the safety of Israel and watch the news. We may get out of this without too much mess, but it's hard to be sure. Like you said, Kent, even if they don't intend to widen the war, it could happen. Wars are like fires. Containing them inside the campfire is sometimes tricky, right?
Especially in the Middle East.
But we shall see how things go. And hopefully America and Israel will move in a more godly direction, at least for a while. Isn't that what we can hope for?
I pray for it.
We can hope for it.
absolutely.
Well, I want to thank all of you for listening this evening and for all the Ken's hard work and Jason and Michael as well for their hard work.
Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Riggs.
Thank you, Dr. Riggs.
All right. On that note, we're going to say goodnight, everyone, and everyone enjoy the rest of their Sabbath. We'll see you back here again next Friday night. Good night.
Good night.
We're happy you could make it, and so glad you are here, and hope that we've been able to make God's word more clear. Until next time, may God be with you in everything you try. But for now, till next week, we have to say goodbye.